The rain fell like tears from a weeping sky, heavy and unrelenting, turning the muddy paths of Eldridge Hollow into rivers of despair. The village huddled at the edge of the whispering woods, a forgotten cluster of thatched roofs and sagging timbers, where the air always carried the sour tang of wet earth and unwashed fear. Lanterns flickered dimly through the downpour, casting long shadows that danced like spectres on the walls of the central square. It was market day, though no one called it that anymore, not since the famines and the endless winters had stripped the land bare. Elara knelt in the muck, her thin wrists bound with rough hemp that bit into her skin like the teeth of some vengeful spirit. At 17, she was all sharp angles and hollow cheeks, her once vibrant auburn hair matted and clinging to her face like drowned vines. The villagers avoided her eyes, those storm-grey depths that held too much knowing for a girl her age. She didn't beg. Begging was for those who still believed in mercy. Instead, she stared at the ground, tracing the patterns in the puddles, swirls that reminded her of the ancient runes her mother had whispered about in bedtime tales before the fever claimed her. The auctioneer, old Harlan, with his pockmarked face and voice like grinding stones, cleared his throat and raised his arms against the drizzle. Lot 12, Elara of the Hollow, strong-backed and obedient. No kin to claim her, no debts unpaid. Bidding starts at a copper, take her for labor or whatever suits. His words hung in the air, laced with the unspoken truths of their world. In Eldridge, girls like her were currency when the crops failed and the wolves howled closer each night. A murmur rippled through the crowd, sodden cloaks shifting like restless ghosts. Farmer Garrick, his belly straining against his tunic, tossed a single coin into the mud at Harlan's feet. It landed with a dull plink, gleaming faintly before the rain swallowed it. "She's mine," he grunted, his eyes raking over her like she was a sack of grain. Elara's stomach twisted, but she kept her gaze down. She'd heard the stories of girls taken to the outer farms, worked until they broke, or worse, passed along when the owners tired of them. Garrick's wife had left him years ago, fleeing into the woods with nothing but the clothes on her back. He wouldn't be kind. Harlan scooped up the coin, nodding curtly. Sold to Garrick for a copper, a fair price in these lean times. The crowd dispersed without fanfare, heads bowed against the storm, as if claiming a life was as mundane as bartering for turnips. Elara rose slowly, her bare feet sinking into the cold sludge, and Garrick yanked her forward by the rope. His grip was iron, calloused fingers digging into her arm. "You'll earn that coin back and more, girl. My fields need weeding and the barn's got chores aplenty." She stumbled after him, the rain blurring her vision, but not enough to hide the way the villagers turned away. Not one glance of pity. Eldridge had long since sold its soul to survival. As they trudged toward the outskirts, the whispering woods loomed larger, their ancient branches clawing at the sky like desperate hands. The trees whispered secrets in the wind. Elara swore she could hear them, faint murmurs of old magic that the elders dismissed as folly. Her mother had believed, though. "The woods remember, child," she'd said, her voice fading like smoke. "They hold the old blood, the shifters and the kings of fang and claw." Garrick's farm was a squat hovel on the wood's edge, surrounded by wilted fields that stretched like open wounds. He shoved her inside, the door slamming shut behind them with a finality that echoed in her chest. The air was thick with the stench of mildew and sour ale. "Strip those rags and put on the smock by the hearth," he barked, already rummaging for a length of chain. "You'll sleep in the shed. No wandering. Woods are full of beasts these days." Elara obeyed in silence, peeling off her soaked dress and donning the threadbare garment. It hung loose on her frame, smelling of dust and forgotten summers. As Garrick fastened the chain to her ankle, linking it to a post by the hearth, she felt the weight settle like a curse. Not iron, but close enough. hemp and rusting links that would chafe and bind. He lumbered out into the rain to secure the animals, leaving her alone with the crackle of the low fire. She curled by the flames, the warmth a cruel tease against her chilled bones. Tears came then, hot and silent, mixing with the rain dripping from her hair. Why her? The hollow had taken her parents, her home, and now this. But deep down, in the quiet places where fear didn't reach, a spark flickered. The woods called to her, their whispers growing louder in the night. She'd always felt different. Dreams of running on four legs, of silver fur under moonlight, of a pack that howled her name. Madness, the villagers said. Witch's blood. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder rumbling like the growl of something ancient awakening. Garrick returned, slumping into a chair with a jug of mead. His snores soon filled the room, ragged and wet. Elara tested the chain, the links rattling softly, too short to reach the door but long enough to stoke the fire. She fed it twigs, watching the flames dance, imagining them as eyes in the dark. Hours passed, the rain easing to a mournful patter. In the distance, a howl pierced the night, not the lone cry of a wolf, but a chorus, deep and resonant, echoing from the heart of the woods. Elara's heart quickened, her skin prickling as if brushed by invisible paws. The whispers grew into words, faint but insistent. Come, blood calls to blood. She pressed her palm to the floor, feeling the earth's pulse beneath the dirt. Garrick stirred in his sleep, muttering curses, but she didn't flinch. For the first time in years, hope stirred in her chest. Not the fragile kind, but something wild, untamed. The Alpha's pack, the old tales spoke of them. Kings of the shadows, protectors of the lost. If they were real, if the woods truly remembered. Dawn crept in grey and reluctant, painting the room in muted light. Garrick unchained her roughly, shoving a hunk of stale bread into her hands. Work the fields till noon. I'll be watching. He trudged out, leaving her to the chill morning. Elara stepped into the yard, the chain discarded but the weight lingering in her mind. The woods beckoned, their edge just beyond the fence, a threshold between despair and destiny. As she bent to the weeds, pulling them with hands that trembled not from cold but from anticipation, another howl echoed, closer now. The villagers would call it a trick of the wind, but Elara knew better. Something was coming, and when it arrived, the coin that bought her would seem like the smallest price paid in a war yet to unfold. The sun clawed its way through the clouds, a pale disk that offered no real warmth, only a mocking glare on the sodden fields. Elara's fingers, raw and cracked from the chill, tore at the weeds with mechanical fury, each yank a small rebellion against the earth that had betrayed her. The air hummed with the scent of turned soil and distant pine, the whispering woods a dark fringe just beyond the sagging fence, their branches swaying like conspirators in the breeze. She could feel their pull, a subtle tug at her core, as if roots from the ancient trees had woven into her veins overnight. Garrick's shadow fell over her before she heard his boots squelch in the mud. He loomed, reeking of sweat and last night's mead, his face twisted in perpetual discontent. "Slower, girl. You're pulling the good roots with the bad. Useless as you are, I'll not have you ruining what's left." His hand shot out, grabbing a fistful of her hair and yanking her head back. Pain bloomed sharp and familiar, but Elara bit her lip, tasting blood instead of a cry. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Not today, when the howls from the night still echoed in her bones. He released her with a shove, sending her sprawling into the muck. Laughter rumbled from his chest, low and cruel, as he turned back to the hovel. "Noon comes soon. Bring water from the stream if you want a sip yourself." The door banged shut, leaving her to the wind's soft lament. She pushed herself up, wiping mud from her cheek, and glanced toward the woods. The howls had been no dream. Closer now, threading through the rustle of leaves like a promise laced with warning. Her skin tingled, a warmth uncoiling in her chest that had nothing to do with the feeble sun. As the morning dragged, Elara worked her way toward the stream that bordered Garrick's land, a narrow ribbon of water snaking from the wood's edge. The chain from the night before was gone, but invisible bonds held her, fear of the lash, the villagers' watchful eyes, the hollow ache of isolation. She knelt by the bank, cupping the icy flow in her hands, letting it soothe the sting on her scalp. Reflections danced on the surface, her face, gaunt and streaked with dirt, eyes like storm clouds gathering force. For a moment she saw not herself, but a shadow of fur and fang, silver-grey and fierce, leaping through moonlit underbrush. The vision faded, leaving her breathless, heart pounding against her ribs. A twig snapped behind her, sharp as a bone breaking. Elara froze, water dripping from her fingers. Not Garrick. His steps were heavier, deliberate. This was lighter, deliberate in its stealth. She turned slowly, her gaze locking on the tree line. There, half hidden by ferns heavy with dew, stood a figure. Not a man, not quite. Tall and broad-shouldered, cloaked in a hood of mottled grey that blended with the bark, but his eyes, golden, piercing, like embers in the gloom. He didn't move, just watched her, head tilted as if scenting the air. "Who?" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. The word died on her lips as another howl rose, this one from deeper in the woods, answered by a chorus that vibrated through the ground. The figure tensed, then melted back into the shadows, gone as swiftly as mist. Elara's pulse thundered, a mix of terror and exhilaration flooding her veins. Was it a hunter, a thief from the outer wilds, or something from the tales, a scout from the pack, the Alpha's vanguard? She filled the bucket hastily, the water sloshing over the rim, and hurried back to the fields. But the encounter clung to her like damp fog, stirring memories she'd buried deep, her mother in the dim light of their old cottage, tracing runes on Elara's palm with a trembling finger. "The blood runs true in you, little one. The moon's children, they walk among us still, shifters of the old line, bound to the Alpha King. If the call comes, you answer, or it consumes you." Elara had laughed then, a child's dismissal, but now the whispers in the woods felt like her own voice, calling her home. By noon, Garrick's temper had soured further. He dragged her into the barn, the air thick with hay dust and the musk of penned livestock. "You dawdled at the stream, thinking of running, eh?" His belt cracked against her back before she could protest, the leather biting through the thin smock. She gasped, curling inward, but the pain sharpened her resolve. Each strike fueled the fire in her blood, the howls replaying in her mind like a battle cry. When he finished, panting and red-faced, he chained her wrist to a beam, muttering about teaching obedience. "Stay put till dusk, and pray the wolves don't catch your scent. They're bolder this season." Alone in the dimness, Elara slumped against the rough wood, tears carving clean paths through the grime on her face. The solitude pressed in, heavy as the chains, but it was laced with a strange comfort. She closed her eyes, and the dreams came unbidden, vivid, pulling her under like the stream's current. She ran through endless forests, paws silent on moss, wind-whipping fur that wasn't there in waking. A massive wolf led the pack, black as midnight, his eyes the same gold she'd glimpsed at the tree line. He turned to her, muzzle lifting in a howl that resonated in her soul. Mine to claim, mine to protect. She woke with a jolt as the barn door creaked open, twilight spilling in like spilled blood. Garrick unchained her, his grip bruising as he pulled her toward the hovel. "Supper's cold. Eat quick and mend my cloak." Inside, the fire sputtered low, casting flickering shadows that seemed to watch her. She chewed the tough roots he shoved at her, her mind elsewhere, on the figure in the woods, the dreams that felt more real than this cage of a life. Night fell heavy, the rain returning in sheets that drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. Garrick snored in his corner, oblivious, but Elara lay awake, staring at the ceiling beams. The howls came again, closer, circling the farm like predators testing boundaries. One rose above the rest, deep and commanding, sending shivers through her. She slipped from her pallet, inching toward the window. Through the streaked glass, she saw them, shadows moving at the wood's edge, eyes glinting like stars in the dark. 5, maybe 6, their forms shifting unnaturally in the downpour. Her breath fogged the pain. The golden-eyed one stepped forward, shedding his hood. Not a man, a wolf-man, half-shifted, muscles rippling under furred skin, fangs bared in what might have been a smile or a snarl. He raised a clawed hand, gesturing toward her, then vanished into the trees with his pack. The whispers swelled in her ears. "Come, the coin's debt ends tonight." Elara's hand trembled on the latch. Garrick stirred, mumbling in his sleep, and she drew back, heart torn between chains and the wild unknown. The pack's howls faded into the storm, but the call lingered, a spark igniting the tinder of her soul. Tomorrow, she knew, the threshold would break. The Alpha King was near, and with him, the unraveling of everything she'd known. Pain twisted in her chest, not just fear, but a fierce, budding joy. For the first time, she wasn't alone in the dark. The blood called, and she would answer. The storm had broken by morning, leaving the world sodden and bruised, as if the sky itself had wept out its fury. Elara rose before Garrick stirred, her body aching from the night's unrest, the howls still echoing in her ears like a lover's whisper turned insistent. She moved quietly through the hovel, slipping into the yard, where the mud clung to her bare feet like reluctant fingers. The air was crisp, laced with the sharp bite of wet leaves and something wilder, musk and earth, the scent of beasts on the prowl. The whispering woods stood sentinel, their canopy a tangled veil that hid secrets older than the village's crumbling stones. She busied herself with the chores, hauling water from the stream under the weak sun's gaze. But her mind wandered to the golden eyes that had pierced the night. Who or what was he? The dreams clung to her like dew, fragments of silver fur and pounding hearts, a pull toward the unknown that made her skin hum. Garrick emerged at last, his eyes bloodshot and narrow, barking orders as he swigged from his jug. "Fields again, girl, and keep your head down. No more daydreaming by the water. Wolves took a sheep last night, they're sniffing too close." Elara nodded, her throat tight, and trudged to the wilted rose. The work was endless, a rhythm of bend and pull that numbed the body but not the soul. As she knelt in the dirt, her fingers brushed something buried shallow, a smooth stone etched with faint spirals that matched the runes from her mother's tales. She pocketed it quickly, heart racing, as if the earth itself had offered a token. The woods seemed closer today, their whispers threading through the wind. "Blood of the moon, come home." By midday, the heat rose unseasonably, turning the air thick and oppressive. Garrick retreated to the shade of the barn, leaving her to the blistering sun. Sweat traced paths down her back, soaking the smock until it clung like a second skin. She paused, wiping her brow, and that's when she heard it. Not a howl, but footsteps, soft and circling the fence line. Her gaze darted to the tree line, where shadows shifted unnaturally, forms too fluid for deer or fox. One broke free, the same figure from before, cloaked but unhooded now. He was man-shaped, yet not tall, with shoulders broad as ancient oaks, his skin marked by faint scars that gleamed like silver threads. His hair fell wild and dark, framing a face chiseled by hardship, but those eyes, they burned with an inner fire, locking onto hers across the distance. He didn't speak, but his lips moved, forming silent words she felt more than heard. "Wait for the dusk." Elara's breath caught, a shiver racing through her despite the warmth. She wanted to run to him, to demand answers, but Garrick's shout shattered the moment. "What are you staring at, lazy wench?" He lumbered from the barn, belt in hand, his face purple with suspicion. The figure vanished into the underbrush, silent as smoke, leaving her alone with the farmer's rage. The blows came swift, leather cracking against her shoulders until she crumpled, tasting soil and blood. Fool girl, thinking the woods'll save you. They're full of monsters. Shifters, they say, tearing folk limb from limb. He spat the word like a curse, chaining her ankle to the fence post once more, the links cold and unyielding. Stay till I fetch you, and scream if you like. No one's coming. He stormed off toward the village, muttering about reinforcements or a priest to ward the land. Elara huddled against the post, pain throbbing in time with her pulse. But it was the absence of the stranger that hurt deeper, a hollow ache like a missing limb. Tears blurred her vision, but she wiped them away, clutching the stone in her pocket. It warmed under her touch, pulsing faintly, and for a moment the world tilted. Visions flooded her, a grand hall of stone and torchlight. Wolves circling a throne where a king sat, his form shifting between man and beast. He extended a hand, calloused and strong, and she reached for it, only to feel the snap of chains pulling her back. The sun dipped low, painting the fields in bloody hues. When the pack emerged fully, they came from the woods, like ghosts materializing, 6 in number, their cloaks shedding to reveal forms that blurred the line between human and wolf. The leader, the golden-eyed one, approached the fence, his movements graceful, predatory. Up close, he was even more imposing, his presence a storm contained, radiating power that made the air crackle. "You're the one," he said, voice low and rough like gravel under paws. "The lost pup. I am Thorn." Beat her to the Alpha King. "We've scented your blood for miles, old lineage tied to the moon's curse and gift." Elara stared, her chained ankle forgotten. "What do you want with me? I'm no one. Just a souled girl, chained like an animal." Thorn's eyes softened, a flicker of something tender amid the feral edge. "No chains hold the true blood. The village reeks of fear. They've forgotten the pact. The Alpha sensed you, drawn by the howls in your dreams. But Garrick returns soon, with men and torches. We can't take you yet, not without the right." "Right?" Her voice trembled, hope and terror twisting like vines in her chest. He knelt, close enough that she caught his scent, pine and wild earth intoxicating. "The moon rises full tonight. It awakens what's dormant, but it demands sacrifice. Face it alone first, or the beast inside devours you whole." His clawed fingers brushed the chain, testing its strength, and for a heartbeat, she imagined freedom in his touch, a warmth that chased away the bruises. A distant shout shattered the air. Garrick's voice joined by others from the village. Thorn rose, his pack shifting restlessly behind him, low growls rumbling like thunder. "Survive the night, Elara. We'll come at the eclipse. The Alpha waits." He pressed something into her hand through the fence, a small vial of dark liquid, smelling of herbs and blood. "Drink if the pain comes. It binds you to us." Then they were gone, melting into the woods as if they'd never been. Garrick burst into view moments later, flanked by 3 villagers, pitchforks and lanterns in hand. "Wolves at the edge. Saw 'em myself, big as bears." He unchained her roughly, yanking her toward the hovel. "Inside, all of you. We'll barricade and wait for dawn." The night closed in, the full moon climbing like a silver eye, watching. Elara sat by the barred window, the vial hidden in her smock, her body thrumming with anticipation. Garrick and the men drank and boasted, their voices slurring into threats of hunts and purges, but she felt the change building, a heat uncoiling in her belly, bones aching as if stretching toward new shapes. The stone in her pocket glowed faintly, and the whispers returned, louder. "Embrace it. Become." Outside, the pack's distant howls rose in chorus, a serenade of destiny. Elara's fingers tightened around the vial. The pain hit then, sharp as birthing, doubling her over in silence. She uncorked it with trembling hands, the liquid burning down her throat like liquid fire. Visions surged, her mother's face smiling through tears, the Alpha King, his black fur shimmering, calling her name. The room spun, fur prickling along her arms, fangs itching at her gums. Garrick noticed too late, his eyes widening in the firelight. What devilry! But she was already rising, the chains of her past cracking under the moon's pull. The first shift rippled through her, partial and agonizing, claws extending as a growl escaped her lips. The men scrambled back, fear twisting their faces, but Elara's world narrowed to the door, the woods beyond. The eclipse began, shadows swallowing the moon's glow, and with it her transformation deepened. Not fully beast, but something in between, a fierce hybrid born of pain and promise. She lunged, the vial's bond igniting her strength, snapping the inner chains of doubt. The hovel's door splintered under her force, and she spilled into the night, the pack's howls welcoming her like kin. Thorn waited at the tree line, his form shifting to match hers. The Alpha's pack claims you now, run with us. Together they vanished into the whispering woods, leaving the village's screams to fade behind. Elara's heart soared, wild and free, the coin's weight lifting like mist in the dawn. But deeper she knew the rite was only beginning. The Alpha's gaze would demand more than blood. It would claim her soul. The whispering woods swallowed Elara whole, their ancient boughs closing like protective arms around her fledgling form. The ground rushed beneath her paws that still felt foreign, half-dreamed into existence by the moon's eclipsed fury. Her body ached with the shift's echo, muscles straining against a skeleton remade, fur matted with rain and the blood of her breaking chains. Thorn loped beside her, his massive frame a shadow of reassurance in the underbrush, while the pack fanned out in a loose circle, their breaths sinking like a heartbeat in the night. The air was alive with scents, damp moss, pine resin, and the metallic tang of her own awakening blood. No longer the girl chained to despair, but something feral, teetering on the edge of wild freedom. They ran for hours, the woods unfolding in layers of shadow and silvered moonlight, paths twisting through gnarled roots that whispered secrets to her newly attuned ears. Elara's mind reeled, fragments of the hovel's chaos fading like smoke. The villagers' screams, Garrick's terrified bellow as her claws raked the doorframe. Guilt flickered in her chest, a thorn amid the exhilaration. But the pack's presence dulled it, their howls weaving a tapestry of belonging she'd never known. Thorn glanced at her, golden eyes gleaming with approval. The first shift is the cruelest, pup. It strips you bare, but what remains is true. Dawn's grey fingers clawed at the horizon when they slowed, emerging into a clearing ringed by colossal oaks whose trunks bore scars like ancient runes. At its centre stood a ruin, crumbling stone walls overgrown with ivy, remnants of some forgotten temple where moonlight pooled like spilled mercury on a cracked altar. The pack shifted seamlessly back to human forms, cloaks materializing from packs slung over shoulders, their bodies lean and marked by the wild, tattoos of fangs and moons curling over sinew-hardened skin. Elara collapsed to her knees, the transformation reversing in a wave of nausea, leaving her human once more, naked and shivering under the chill air. A female shifter, tall with raven hair braided with feathers, tossed her a fur-lined cloak, her expression a mix of wariness and curiosity. "Lyra," she introduced herself, voice husky from the night's run. "You've got the scent of old blood. But prove it in the pack, or the woods will claim you yet." The others nodded, murmuring names. Kyle, a scarred scout with a limp. Mira, sharp-eyed and quick. And Ronan, broad and silent, his gaze lingering on Elara with unspoken questions. They built a fire swiftly, sparks catching on dry tinder, the flames casting dancing shadows that made the ruins feel alive, watchful. Thorn knelt beside her, offering a strip of dried venison. "Eat. The Alpha approaches. He's waited long for one like you." Elara's hands trembled as she tore into the meat, the flavor rich and vital, chasing away the hollow ache of her past. Questions burned on her tongue. Who was this Alpha King? Why her? But the words stuck, tangled in the awe of her survival. The vial's burn still lingered in her veins, a bridge to this hidden world, yet it whispered of deeper bonds, of sacrifices yet to come. As the sun crested, bathing the clearing in reluctant light, a low rumble echoed from the woods, a single howl, deep and resonant, that vibrated through Elara's bones like a command. The pack stilled, heads bowing instinctively. He emerged then, the Alpha King, striding from the tree line like thunder-given form, tall and imposing, his frame dwarfed even thorns, black hair falling to shoulders, etched with tribal scars that glowed faintly under the dappled sun. His eyes were midnight blue, piercing and ancient, holding storms she'd only glimpsed in her dreams. Clad in leather and fur, a crown of antler-like bone resting on his brow, he moved with predatory grace, the air around him humming with raw power. Ragnar. The name rippled through the pack's minds, unspoken, but felt. He stopped before Elara, his presence a weight that pressed her to the earth, stirring the dormant wolf within. She rose unsteadily, meeting his gaze, her storm-grey eyes defiant despite the fear coiling in her gut. "You are the lost one," he said. Voice, a gravelly timbre that echoed the wood's deepest murmurs. "Sold for a coin, yet worth kingdoms. The moon revealed you, blood of the first shifters, bound to our line." Elara swallowed, the cloak slipping slightly from her shoulders. "I didn't ask for this. The village. They feared what they didn't understand. Am I one of you now?" Her words hung fragile, laced with the loneliness that had shadowed her life, now cracking under his scrutiny. Ragnar's lip curled, not in anger, but something akin to sorrow. "The shift chose you as it chooses few, but belonging demands more than blood. The empire beyond the woods stirs, hunters with iron and fire, seeking to purge our kind. They've scented the breach at Eldridge, your escape a spark to their war." He extended a hand, calloused and steady, and when she took it, a jolt passed between them, visions flashing, shared runs under full moons, battles in shadowed glens, a tenderness buried in fangs and claw. Yet beneath it, a shadow. Her role as the key, the one whose old blood could unite fractured packs or doom them all. The pack gathered closer, the fire's warmth, a frail barrier against the rising tension. Thorn spoke low. "The rite continues, my king." She drank the binding, but the full moon's echo lingers, trials await, to temper her gift. Ragnar nodded, releasing her hand but not his gaze. "Tonight, under the stars, face the beast alone in the temple's heart. Survive and you run with us. Fail." He trailed off, the implication heavy as the ruin's stones. Elara's heart pounded, a mix of dread and fierce resolve blooming. This was no gentle welcome. It was destiny's forge, hammering away the girl sold for copper, until only the Queen of Fangs remained. As the day waned, the pack prepared, sharpening blades and chanting low incantations that stirred the air with ethereal mist. Elara wandered the clearing's edge, the rune stone from the field warm in her pocket, a talisman against the unknown. Lyra joined her, offering a waterskin. "He's not cruel, the Alpha. Lost his mate to hunters years ago. Carries that scar deeper than any claw. You're stirring old fires in him, pup. Be careful. Love in the pack is as binding as any chain." Elara nodded, the words sinking in like roots. Love impossible, born of blood and moon, yet in Ragnar's eyes she'd seen a flicker of it, tender amid the storm. As twilight bled into night, the pack led her to the altar, its surface etched with symbols that glowed under her touch. They left her there, alone with the rising stars, the wood's whispers urging her forward. The change built again, slower this time, a symphony of ache and power. Fur rippled along her skin, bones elongating with a growl that was hers alone. In the temple's embrace, Elara surrendered, the beast rising not as enemy, but ally. Howls answered from the pack, a chorus of acceptance, but Ragnar's voice cut through, deep and possessive. Mine. The night deepened, trials unfolding in shadows, visions of battles past. Temptations of the wild's rage, but she endured, emerging at dawn with eyes brighter, spirit forged anew. The Alpha waited, pride in his stance, and as she stepped into his arms, the pack howled in unison. The coin's era ended, a queen's reign began, shadowed by wars yet to come, but lit by the hope of a heart finally claimed. The days blurred into a rhythm of fur and fang, the whispering woods, a labyrinthine cradle that both sheltered and tested Elara's nascent wildness. Mornings dawned with the pack's hunts, silent pursuits through mist-shrouded glens where deer fell like whispers to the earth, their warm blood a sacrament shared around crackling fires. Elara's shifts came easier now, the moon's pull a familiar ache rather than a torment. Her silver-grey form weaving among the others with growing grace. Yet beneath the exhilaration lurked shadows, echoes of Eldridge's mud and Garrick's chains, guilt that coiled like ivy around her heart. She had fled, but the village's fear had festered, birthing rumours that rippled outward like stones in a still pond. Ragnar watched her always. His midnight blue eyes, a constant horizon she navigated, drawing her into the pack's core with unspoken commands. He was a storm contained, his touch rare but electric, a brush of knuckles against her cheek during evening councils, or the solid press of his shoulder in the run. Love bloomed in stolen moments, impossible and fierce, born of shared silences by the river's edge, where he traced the scars on her back with calloused fingers. "The hunters took my first mate," he'd murmur, voice rough as gravel, the words a confession dragged from depths. "She was light in the dark, like you, but light draws blades." Elara leaned into him then, her head on his chest, listening to the thunder of his heart, feeling the beast within him stir in harmony with hers. It was tenderness wrapped in thorns, a promise that both healed and warned. Thorn and Lyra became her anchors, the beta's golden gaze steady with brotherly counsel, while Lyra's sharp wit masked a fierce protectiveness. "The Alphas marked you, pup," Lyra said one twilight, as they sharpened arrows by the temple ruins, the air thick with the scent of pine sap and cooling earth. "But marks come with weight. The Empire's scouts probe the borders, iron nets and silver-tipped bolts, whispering of a witch girl who unleashed the wolves on Eldridge. Elara's claws flexed involuntarily, digging into the wood, the memory of her partial shift in the hovel flashing vivid. Garrick's face contorted in terror, the villagers' lanterns bobbing like malevolent fireflies as she vanished into the night. "They deserved their fear," she whispered, but doubt gnawed, a quiet erosion. Had her awakening doomed them all? The escalation came on the fifth night under a moon waxing toward fullness, its silver light filtering through the canopy like spilled mercury. The pack gathered in a hidden hollow, ringed by ferns heavy with dew, their forms human, save for the feral glint in their eyes. Ragnar stood at the center, antler crown casting jagged shadows, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "The Empire marches. Word from our spies. Riders from the capital, 24 strong, with hounds bred to scent shifter blood. They blame us for the Hollow's unrest, call it a curse unleashed. We move at dawn, scout the eastern ridge, draw them into the wood's embrace." His gaze found Elara, holding her in place. "You run with me, lost one. Your blood sings the old songs. It may turn the tide." She nodded, resolve hardening like frost on leaves, but as the pack dispersed to prepare, a shiver traced her spine, not from cold, but from the vial's lingering echo, the binding that pulsed in her veins like a second heartbeat. Alone by a stream that chuckled over moss-slick stones, she cupped water to her lips, the cool rush soothing the fire building within. Visions assailed her unbidden, the stone from Garrick's field glowing in her palm, runes awakening to reveal a prophecy, a queen of mixed blood, bridge between man and beast, whose choice would shatter empires or forge unbreakable pacts. But choice demanded sacrifice, and the whispers warned of loss, a piece of her humanity or Ragnar's guarded heart. Dusk deepened into velvet darkness, the woods alive with nocturnal symphony, cricket's chorus, the distant hoot of owls, and the subtle rustle of the pack-shifting forms. Elara loped beside Ragnar, her paws silent on the needle-strewn path, his black-furred bulk a comforting shadow. The eastern ridge rose before them, a jagged spine of rock and thorn where the woods thinned into contested lands. The Empire's farmlands, a hazy scar on the horizon. They crested it under cover of night, senses attuned to the wind's tails, horse sweat, oiled leather, and the acrid bite of silver. The hunters came at midnight, their torches flaring like angry stars, mounted figures clad in chainmail that clinked like mocking laughter. Hounds bayed, muzzles foaming, drawn inexorably to Elara's scent. "There! The witch spawn!" a captain bellowed, his voice carrying over the din, sword raised as arrows whistled through the air. One grazed Ragnar's flank, drawing a snarl that shook the leaves. But he lunged, jaws snapping a rider from his saddle in a spray of crimson. Chaos erupted, the pack bursting from the shadows like vengeful spirits, Thorn's claws rending a hound, Lyra's form a blur of fangs amid the fray. Elara's world narrowed to survival, her hybrid heart pounding as she dodged a net woven with silver threads, its barbs singing of agony. A hunter bore down on her, lance gleaming, his face twisted in righteous fury. "For the coin that bought your soul, beast!" he spat, the words a dagger to her past. Rage ignited, the shift surging fully. She met him mid-leap, claws tearing through mail, the metallic tang of blood mingling with rain-scented air. But victory soured as pain lanced her side, an arrow's bite, silver-tipped, burrowing deep. She staggered, vision blurring, the wound a fire that spread through her veins, threatening to unravel the beast's fragile hold. Ragnar was there in an instant, his massive form shielding her, a roar that felled two more foes. He dragged her into the underbrush, the pack covering their retreat with howls that echoed like war drums. "Hold on!" he growled, shifting to human as he pressed his hand to the wound. Blood, his own, smeared across her fur in an ancient rite. The contact burned, visions flooding, his mate's fall, a silver bolt piercing her chest under a similar moon. Now Elara, the echo he couldn't lose. Tears stung his eyes, rare and raw, as he whispered, "Not you, the gods won't take another light from me." She whimpered, the silver's poison warring with the bond, forcing a partial reversal that left her trembling in his arms, human and vulnerable. The pack regrouped in a cave, hollowed by time, torches sputtering against damp walls, etched with faded claw marks of battles long past. Lyra bound the wound with herbs that smelled of earth and regret, her face grim. "Silver weakens the line. You'll heal, but slower. The old blood fights it, yet it scars the soul." Thorn scouted the entrance, reporting the hunter's retreat, battered but vowing return with reinforcements. In the cave's dim glow, Ragnar held Elara close, his breath ragged against her hair. "This war claims pieces of us," he admitted, voice breaking the silence like cracking ice. "I feared the shift would break you, but it's the world that bends us. Stay with me, not as pup, but equal. Let me claim you fully under the next moon." His words were a vow, laced with the melancholy of foretold loss, yet blooming with hope's fragile light. Elara traced the scars on his chest, her touch a silent affirmation, the pain in her side a reminder of purpose. The Empire's shadow loomed larger, demanding more than blood. Her transformation's climax neared, a sacrifice that would forge their union or shatter it amid the gathering storm. Outside, the wind howled through the ridge, carrying the distant clamor of the hunters' camp, but within, their hearts beat in tandem, a quiet rebellion against the encroaching dark. Elara closed her eyes, the whispers of the woods a lullaby now, promising dawn's renewal even as night deepened its grip. The cave's damp chill seeped into Elara's bones like a thief in the night, the silver wound a throbbing ember that refused to fade. She lay on a bed of moss and furs, the pack's herbs a bitter poultice against her side, drawing out the poison in slow, agonizing pulses. Ragnar's hand rested heavy on her forehead, his touch an anchor amid the fever dreams that clawed at her mind. Visions of Eldridge's muddy square, the coin's cold glint, and Garrick's face dissolving into the hunter's snarling hounds. The air hung thick with the scent of blood-soaked earth and smouldering pine, the pack's low murmurs weaving through the shadows like threads of a fraying tapestry. Thorn paced the entrance, his golden eyes scanning the night beyond, while Lyra brewed more salve over a shielded flame, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. "The silver's grip loosens," she said, her voice a husky thread cutting the tension. "But it leaves a mark, deeper than flesh. You'll shift weaker for weeks, pup. The old blood fights, but it remembers every betrayal." Elara nodded faintly, her storm-grey eyes meeting Ragnar's, finding solace in their midnight depths. He hadn't left her side since the ridge, his massive frame curled protectively around hers, as if his will alone could mend what the Empire had torn. Guilt gnawed at her, sharper than the wound. The battle's chaos replayed in fragments, her claws rending the hunter who spat of her souled soul, the spray of blood warm on her fur. Had she become the monster they feared? The pack had lost Kyle in the fray, a scout's keen senses no match for a silver bolt through the throat, his absence a hollow in their circle, his final howl echoing in Elara's ears like an accusation. Ronan sat silent in the corner, sharpening his blade with rhythmic scrapes, his broad shoulders hunched under the weight of grief. "He was like a brother," he muttered once, voice thick before falling quiet again. As midnight deepened, the fever broke in a sweat that left Elara shivering, Ragnar drawing her closer, his breath warm against her neck. "The moon calls again soon," he whispered, fingers tracing the curve of her jaw, tender despite the calluses born of endless wars. "Full and unforgiving. If you accept my claim, the bond will seal, your strength to mine, the pack's heart to yours. But it demands truth. No shadows between us." His words carried the melancholy of a king who had lost too much, the antler crown set aside like a relic of forgotten glory. Elara's heart twisted, love's impossible bloom unfurling amid the pain, a fierce ache that mirrored the wound, promising union yet shadowed by sacrifice. She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling the steady thunder beneath scarred skin. "The visions, they show me as the bridge, Ragnar, but bridges break under armies. What if my blood draws them closer? The village, the hunters, they see me as the curse that started it all." Tears welled, hot and unbidden, tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. He cupped her face, thumb brushing them away, his midnight eyes softening with a vulnerability that pierced deeper than any arrow. "You are no curse, Elara. You are the spark, the old lineage awakening what slumbers in us all. I've walked these woods alone too long, guarding a throne of ghosts. Claim me as I claim you, and we'll face the storm together." The pack stirred at his words, a subtle shift in the air, like the woods holding their breath. Lyra glanced up from her herbs, a rare smile ghosting her lips, while Thorn nodded from the shadows, his beta's loyalty a quiet vow. But peace was fleeting. Dawn's first light filtered through cracks in the stone, revealing dust motes dancing like omens. A scout's urgent howl pierced the morning. Ragnar tensed, rising with predatory grace, cloak swirling as he strapped on his blade. Empire riders, closer than before, they've rallied silver-forged and chanting wards. We move now, back to the temple ruins. Elara, stay with Lyra, heal what you can. She pushed against him, the wound protesting with fresh fire. No, I run with you. The words came fierce, born of the beast stirring within, silver weakened but unbowed. Ragnar's gaze searched hers, pride flickering amid concern, and he relented with a nod, helping her to her feet. The pack shifted in unison, forms blurring into fur and fang under the rising sun, a symphony of growls and padding paws that vibrated through the earth. Elara's change came halting, the silver a drag on her limbs, but Ragnar's presence bolstered her, his black-furred flank brushing hers, a silent infusion of strength through the budding bond. They wove through the wood's heart, ancient trees arching overhead like guardians, their branches whispering warnings in the wind. The temple ruins emerged from the mist, ivy-clad stones pulsing with faint runes that glowed at Elara's approach, as if recognizing her blood. The pack circled the clearing, forming a defensive ring, while Ragnar led her to the altar, its cracked surface cool under her paws. "Here, under the midday sun's veil, we begin," he rumbled, shifting back to human. His naked form a testament to raw power and old wounds. He knelt before her, eyes locking with hers in ritual intensity. "I, Ragnar, Alpha of the Whispering Pack, claim you, Elara of the Lost Blood. Share my hunt, my heart, my fate." The words ignited something primal, the vial's echo surging with the moon's distant pull. Elara shifted fully, pain lancing her side, but she pressed forward, nuzzling his shoulder in affirmation. A gesture both wolf and woman, sealing the vow with a shared howl that shook the leaves. The pack answered, their chorus a wave of unity, but joy fractured as thunderous hooves shattered the moment. Hunters burst from the tree line, 200 strong, banners snapping in the breeze, their silver-laced nets glinting like spiderwebs of doom. Chaos reignited, the pack lunging into the fray with snarls that blended fury and sorrow. Elara fought beside Ragnar, her weakened form dodging lances, claws finding purchase on armored thighs. But the silver in her blood slowed her, a hunter's bolt grazing her haunch, drawing a yelp that tore from her throat. Ragnar roared, shielding her once more, his jaws crushing a rider's arm. But a net ensnared him, barbs piercing fur, dragging him down amid the mud and trampled ferns. "No!" Elara's cry echoed human and beast, the bond flaring like wildfire, lending her strength to snap the cords around him. They retreated to the ruin's heart, the pack harrying the foe with guerrilla strikes, blood staining the sacred stones. Panting, Ragnar pulled her into the temple's shadowed core, a hidden chamber where moonlight had once bathed ancient rites. "The sacrifice comes now," he gasped, wounds blooming red across his chest. "To fully bind, one must yield, a piece of the self, offered to the woods." His hand found the stone in her cloak, the rune-etched talisman from the fields, now glowing fiercely. Elara clutched it, visions crashing. Her humanity's fragile shell, Ragnar's heart laid bare, the Empire's iron tide breaking on their united will. Tears mingled with blood on her fur as she pressed the stone to his chest, then her own, the runes searing like brands. Pain crested, not just physical but soul-deep. A shedding of chains, the girl sold for coin dissolving into the queen emerging. The bond sealed in a blaze of light, their howls intertwining, the pack's distant cries fueling the transformation. Outside, the hunters faltered, their wards cracking under the awakened power, retreating into the haze. But Elara knew the climax loomed larger. The full moon's rite would demand ultimate loss, a heart's truth bared, forging their destiny amid encroaching war. In Ragnar's embrace, amid the ruins' melancholic hush, hope flickered, tender and unyielding, a dawn piercing the endless night. The full moon hung like a severed pearl in the ink-black sky, its light piercing the temple ruins in silver shafts that danced across the bloodied stones. Elara's breath came in ragged gasps, the bond's fresh seal a living flame in her veins, warring with the silver's lingering venom. Ragnar's arms encircled her, his wounds seeping warm against her furred side, their shared howls still echoing faintly through the whispering woods. The pack's cries wove in from the fringes, victorious snarls fading into wary growls, as the hunters' retreat turned to rout, their silver wards shattered like brittle illusions under the awakened power of old blood. But victory tasted of ash. Kale's loss, Ronan's grief, the scars etching deeper into the pack's soul. They pressed on Elara like the weight of ancient oaks. She shifted back to human form, the change a shuddering wave that left her naked and trembling on the altar's cracked surface. Ragnar mirroring her, his midnight blue eyes shadowed with the cost of protection. "The right peaks now," he murmured, voice a gravelly thread laced with sorrow, his fingers tracing the fresh brand on her chest where the runestone had burned. It pulsed in harmony with the one on his skin, a twin scar symbolizing unity forged in fire. The moon demands the final offering, not flesh, but the heart's hidden thorns. Face it with me, or the bond phrase, and the Empire claims us all. Elara nodded, her storm-grey eyes meeting his. Love's impossible tangle, blooming fierce amid the pain. The wood's whispers swelled into a chorus, urging her toward the chamber's heart. A sunken pool fed by an underground spring, its waters black as forgotten oaths, rimmed by glowing runes that stirred at her approach. The pack gathered at the threshold, forms half-shifted in vigilant silhouettes, Thorn's golden gaze steady, Lyra's feathers rustling softly, Ronan's blade drawn, but lowered in quiet reverence. They would guard the right, but this trial was theirs alone, a stripping bare of souls, where sacrifice revealed truth. Hand in hand, they descended the moss-slick steps, the air growing thick with mist that carried the scent of earth and wild herbs. The moon's reflection, fracturing on the pool's surface like shattered dreams. Ragnar stripped the remnants of his cloak, stepping into the shallows first, the water lapping at his thighs like tentative claws. "The old blood binds us," he said, pulling her in, the chill biting deep but kindling the inner fire. "Reveal your shadows, Elara. The girl sold for coin. The beast that fled, offer them to the moon and let the queen rise." His touch on her waist was tender, a counterpoint to the violence they'd wrought, his lips brushing her temple in a kiss that tasted of pine and promise. The water rose to their chests as they submerged to their waists, the runes igniting in a cascade of ethereal light that illuminated the chamber's walls. Faded murals of ancient shifters, wolves entwined with human lovers under eclipsed skies. Elara's vision blurred, the bond pulling forth buried pains. The auction's mud, her mother's fading whispers, Garrick's lash and the villagers' averted eyes. "I carry their fear," she confessed, voice breaking like waves on stone, tears mingling with the spring's flow. "My awakening doomed eldridge, innocence caught in the hunter's purge. What if I'm the curse they named me?" Ragnar's embrace tightened, his own shadows surfacing in the right's merciless glow. Visions assailed them both, his first mate's fall, silver piercing her throat as he howled in futile rage. The pack's fractures from endless wars, his throne a lonely vigil amid ghosts. "We all bear curses born of survival," he replied, his midnight eyes glistening, vulnerability cracking the king's armor. "I claimed you to heal my fractures, but love demands I yield control. The alpha who guards alone must trust the pack's heart. Sacrifice my pride, Elara, as I offer yours to the light." The moon's pull crested, the water churning into a vortex that dragged them under, the bond flaring white-hot. Elara arched, a cry escaping as the thorns of her past tore free, not in blood, but in ethereal wisps that rose like smoke, dissolving into the light. Ragnar's roar joined hers, his guarded heart unfolding, the weight of lost mates and fallen kin lifting in a cathartic blaze. Pain with purpose surged through them, the silver scar fading to a faint silver thread on her side, the old blood purifying what the Empire had poisoned. They emerged gasping, entwined, the pool stilled to mirror-like calm, the runes dimming as if sated. The pack's howls greeted their ascent, a symphony of relief and renewed strength, the air humming with unity. Thorn clasped Ragnar's shoulder, a rare grin splitting his face. "The bridge holds, my king. The Empire's riders scatter. Our spies report their captain fallen, wards broken by the right's echo." Elara draped furs over Elara, her touch sisterly now, while Ronan nodded solemnly, Cale's memory honored in their shared gaze. The war wasn't ended. The Empire's shadow loomed, promising greater clashes. But the pack stood forged anew. Elara no longer the lost pup, but the queen whose blood wove their fates. Dawn crept through the ruins, painting the stones in hues of rose and gold, a symbolic rebirth chasing the night's melancholy. Ragnar drew Elara to the clearing's edge, where the woods parted to reveal the first light kissing the horizon. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her lip, eyes holding hers in a silent vow deeper than words. "The coin's chain is dust," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "You are my equal, my light in the storm. Together we hunt the dawn." She leaned into him, their scars touching, a final gesture of tenderness amid the wild's embrace. The pack gathered behind, forms silhouetted against the rising sun, howls rising soft and hopeful. Elara's heart swelled, solitude banished, destiny claimed through sacrifice. The whispering woods sighed in approval, their ancient boughs swaying like a benediction. In that moment, pain bloomed into purpose, death yielding to life's fierce pulse, and the Alpha King's pack ran onward, unbreakable under the new day's grace.